Hello, my name is Catherine Foley and I'm going to read again today from my book Beyond the Breakwater, Memories of Home, which came out 2 years ago. And today's chapter is chapter 57 and it's called Rome. When RoseAnn and I visited Rome some years ago, we decided to visit our Aunt Maura's grave. She'd been a teaching nun in Rome for many years, a member of the Sacred Heart of Mary Order. She had taught at the Order's school, Marymount, and we wanted to pay our respects. We'd forego the Colosseum and the Trevi Fountain until the second day of our visit, and we'd search instead for the convent graveyard that we thought was on the Via Nomentana. I remembered Auntie Maura as a soft-spoken woman with glasses and short grey hair. She was not without vanity, as she would never allow her sister to claim that she was younger than her, and she used to ask my mother to put a set in her hair with the electric rollers when she was home on her biannual holiday. She was usually dressed in various shades of navy or grey, always blouses, cardigans and sensible skirts. The days of the full habit and the wimple that she had worn in earlier decades were long gone at that stage. She had a steely quality about her too, a quiet, steady look that I remember. It was the all-knowing look of someone who was used to teaching teenage girls. Generally, we kept out of her way for fear she might ask about our spiritual well-being or our religious intentions. But she used to bring us lovely presents too. Beach bags, sun hats and bracelets, all imbued with the summer colours of Roman stalls. She knew what we'd like. And yet a sighting of Auntie Maura on the horizon could often occasion a mad dash out of view, as we were convinced she might ask us if we'd ever considered the idea of entering the convent. Sister Alphonsus, or Sister Maura Foley as she was known in later years, had only been a teenager when she entered the convent. Born in 1913, she was barely 16 when she left Ireland to join the Sacré-Cœur Order in the United States. Family lore has it that she played the violin as the ship pulled away from the quay, her father, Dan Foley, waving her off. She was his third eldest. It was a life-changing step to take. She was not allowed home even for her father's funeral in 1937, and not for many years after that either. Her time in New York's Tarrytown, where she made her first profession of vows in 1933, was followed by a stint in California, then France, and finally Italy, where she was based for many years until her death in 1984 when she was 70 years of age. We knew she was a teacher and a principal at one stage in the Order's secondary school, where many famous people sent their children. And so RoseAnn and I set out to find the convent and the little graveyard on Rome's Via Nomentana. The streets were deserted as we headed off. It was a bank holiday in Italy that day, and it was the middle of winter. We were delighted when we found that long, leafy boulevard, and when we discovered a little stone church behind some railings, we felt confident we were close, as there was a small cemetery behind it. We couldn't be sure it was the correct place, of course, but with a high level of hope we walked between the slabs of stones, feeling like emissaries from old Aaron's Isle, bringing the family's love to our exiled relative. The dry chill gave the tombs and the dusty railings, the crosses and little plinths an extra frisson of finality. But we were sure that if we could only identify her grave, we'd be able to commune in some way with Auntie Maura's soul. But there were no inscriptions that we could decipher. We could find no clues in the Italian wording or the Roman numerals on the little slabs. We didn't know what else to do. Of course, we didn't dare phone the convent on the Via Nomentana, After years of maintaining our distance from nuns, we had an inbuilt reluctance to engage with religious communities of any kind. So after an hour or two, we went back out through the little church onto the wide sloping thoroughfare of the Via Nomentana. The city was quiet in the twilight. There was a hush about the evening. It felt like a Sunday. Very few cars passed, and we were tired after the time we'd spent wandering amongst the dead. We shivered, feeling the night was full of portent. We crossed the wide residential street and began the trek in the direction of the city centre. In the dimly lit gloom, we both looked back ruefully, sad that we hadn't found Auntie Maura's grave. And that's when we saw her, the nun, as if floating above the hedge, her long wimple unmistakable, her silhouette lit within the domed awning of a fanlight. It seemed like an unnaturally large head. We gripped one another, terrified, and walked on quickly, not sure what we had seen. Was it a larger-than-life etching of a nun's head in an alcove? Had it hovered there over the hedge? Had it followed us? As we passed, the ghostly vision seemed to disappear. All of a sudden it was gone out of view. It was as if she had been a figment of our imagination. In hindsight, I realise it was only a large etching of a nun's wimpled head, framed and lit within the fanlight of a doorway. But the momentary nature of her appearance spooked us, and we started to run, as if for our lives. We ran until we were breathless. We ran the length of the Via Nomentana, terrified, and it would be many years before we returned. And I'd like to dedicate that to Sister John Bosco, who often listens to these readings in Rome, because many years later, when RoseAnn and I did return to Rome, she helped us find our aunt's grave, and she had worked with Auntie Maura for many years, and they were great friends. And so thank you for listening. There are other things in the book, and I hope to bring out a second volume in time, and there's a follow-up story on our second visit to Rome. But anyway, that's all for today, and thanks a million for listening. Slán live. Bye.